Welcome to week 11 of the NFL season. It's the War Room powered by Pro Football Focus and, of course, brought to you by DraftKings.com. I'm Jeff Ratcliffe, back in the saddle with Pat Thorman once again. Pat, chalky week. I don't know. Last week seemed really chalky, and then it turned out to be what was it? The stat was the most underdog covers since like 1970 something last week. So it can't possibly happen again, right?
No, well, I guess anything's possible, but I sure hope not, because we're pretty confident with a lot of this chalk, and we were certainly dependent on that hitting, especially in our cash games.
Yeah. It's one of those weeks where you put together the lineups and well, everything seems pretty easy. A lot of times, pull the curtain back. Me and Pat start the show. We meet up here online like a few minutes early, and one or the other. Usually, it's me saying, I don't know, I have two different lineups. Which do you like better? But this week doesn't seem to be that case. You can get so much value in your lineup this week that on daily sites that it makes things pretty easy. But of course, there's a lot going on, and of course, we're going to check in on stuff for season long as well. Pat, we'll start with the biggest news of the last 20 minutes. A lot of news, a lot of interesting stuff this morning, but Emmanuel Sanders is going to be inactive today. We heard, and it's so funny, I think, on social media when people grab hold of certain words. Somebody must have said he was gimpy, because I saw about 5,000 tweets that use the word gimpy, and that's not a word that most people usually use, so pretty funny there. But either way, he's not going to be active here. We're going to see, a variety. We'll see some Benny Fowler. We'll see some Andre Caldwell. We might even see some Cody Latimer in a significant role finally, and then obviously a healthy dose of the tight end. But the question is, how much confidence do you have in this offense in general? Brock Osweiler, the big unknown, and big by, 6'8", certainly big in that sense. But can he run the Kubiak offense? Peyton Manning couldn't run the Kubiak offense, and it really destroyed their run game because they were able to just crash in on the run game. You were seeing the defensive ends crash in, no running lanes, and Kubiak's offense really functions on getting those running lanes wide open, and you can't do that out of a pistol. So, I guess the question is, do you trust any of these guys for fantasy purposes this week, outside of obviously you own Demaryius Thomas, you're starting him. But general thoughts and expectations for the Broncos today, Pat?
I'm anxious to see how the running game does look. Because, like you said, the ends can crash down. They tried having Peyton do some bootlegs, and that was just sad to watch. So Oz can get out to the edge and keep them honest at least. I don't think that Chicago is going to push Denver very much. The Denver's defense is still super strong. Chicago's going to be without Alshon. So I think both teams are going to play pretty close to the vest. It's going to be a cold weather game. But I think the running game stands a heck of a lot better chance of showing what we expected from them than when Peyton was in there. And like you said, with Demaryius, he's going to pepper him with targets. And that Latimer call is interesting. He came in at the end of the game, the last game, and showed a little bit of something, and he's got some practice time with Osweiler. So maybe he kind of makes good on some of the expectations we had, even going back as far as last year.
Yeah, well, let's hope. Somebody who's heavily invested in him in dynasty leagues. A lot of upside, but sometimes it does take the receivers, especially receiver, cornerback, defensive end. These are positions. Quarterback, of course, are positions that really the learning curve is steep for some players, and right now. It's unfortunate the way that fans are right now. With the short attention span, we want everything on demand immediately. You have to be Odell Beckham Jr. right off the bat, and that's just not the case for some of these guys. It takes a little bit of time. The old adage was 3 years with wide receivers, and so we're still obviously in that window for Latimer. But it would be nice to get an extended look at him today. Let's hit up some of these questions before we get into the inactives for today. George is asking about Darren McFadden or Latavius Murray in a half-point PPR. Pat, where do you go with that one?
I still have McFadden above Murray. I like them both. But McFadden, the worry is, with the rain, they might take it a little bit easy on his workload. But we got to trust what they say. He says he's good. They say he's good. And with Romo back there, I think it loosens up a little bit in the running game for them. Dolphins don't stop the run very well. So I think McFadden is the call here. Although I do like Latavius as a back end running back one as well.
Yeah, and let's not forget Jelani Jenkins is not going to play in this one, so that means Kelvin Shepherd will be out there. That's a downgrade for this defense, and so this certainly opens things up a little bit more. And what people don't talk about enough is Tony Romo's impact. When you have a quarterback who you're not afraid of, what are you going to do? You're going to stack the box. You're going to put 8 players in the box on every freaking play, right? And that's what we saw them doing against the Cowboys. And McFadden was still somewhat successful here. I mean, obviously not to the expectations of some fantasy owners, but still solid performances. And I do like McFadden there out of those two options. As much as I like to get a piece of this this Detroit and Oakland game, you know, hey, and that's the highest projected game in terms of our box scores, our projected box scores, which you should be using a great resource for daily for anything. I mean, it cross checks your results here. So the other question we have it's a waiver wire question. It says Everson Griffin, Olivier Vernon, Rob Ninkovich. I'm going to lean towards Griffin there. You know, I do like what we've seen out of Griffin as a pass rusher. Having Linval Joseph play as well as he has really opened things up for him. Vernon is up and down, and I think that this might be a down week. Romo's actually tough to sack. He's really a elusive quarterback in the pocket. And then Rob Ninkovich, I've talked about this numerous times on the podcast. He has really struggled this year. His tax per opportunity is down. He never has been very effective on a per pass rush basis in getting pressure. So for me, I'm going to go Everson Griffin there. Another IDP question. Sorry, Pat. But Antrel Roll or William Moore, I think this one's really clearly William Moore. William Moore, when he's on the field, is very, very effective. Antrel Roll is banged up a little bit over the hill and not being used the way he was in New York. We always have to look at the present, not the past. And when he was in New York, he was used as Malcolm Jenkins is being used right now for the Eagles. And that role is a hybrid role where these guys are kicking down and covering the slot in the nickel packages. Role was productive in that role, but not this year. He's not being used that way, and so I'm going to go there. So PPR, we have Demaryius Thomas and Amari Cooper, I guess, are in the lineup, and he's choosing between T.Y. Hilton, Stephon Diggs, Jeremy Maclin, and obviously, Greg, you point out Maclin gets Jason Verrett. Verrett is awesome, and he's healthy because he had a bye week, so I'm definitely off on Maclin there. T.Y. Hilton, the Falcons are despite not generating any pressure, are a really tough matchup for opposing wide receivers. So I might lean Diggs there. It's a sneaky play. I think that Diggs certainly has outkicked his coverage, but I might lean Diggs just because I am concerned. Though I wouldn't fault you if you played Hilton. Pat, what is it? It comes down to those two for you, I'm sure. But which way are you leaning?
Yeah, I have them back to back. Someone asked me this on Twitter this morning, and it wasn't an easy call. I do have Hilton above him just because he has a little bit more of a big play potential, and Hasselbeck did look his way in the 2 games that he had started earlier in the season. But it's super close. I'm flipping a coin, and it's coming up Ty for me.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the matchup is intriguing against the Packers defense. That remember when people said they were good? They haven't been all season. They certainly exceeded expectations early on. They have no linebacker play. Some intriguing young players in the secondary, but they're not able to generate much of any pressure on the quarterback as well. But yeah, I guess you go maybe higher ceiling with Hilton, but the floor is pretty low in that matchup. But it's close. And then 1 wide receiver, 1 flex. Matt Jones, Charles Sims, Joique Bell, Michael Floyd. Well, Michael Floyd, no, immediately. And then Kamar Aiken. Oh, man, that is pretty brutal. So obviously your 1 receiver is Kamar Aiken. And then at the flex, Pat, I guess I'm going to lean Matt Jones.
Yeah. He seems to have, the higher ceiling of those 3. One interesting note was Vegas, or at least the sharps in Vegas, do seem to be on the Lions with the line moves. And I mean, if you're looking for a reason to start Joique Bell, that might be it. But I mean, if that's a super low floor play, I think I would go with Jones myself as well.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup for Jones against the Panthers, but. And it's close. It is very close. I have Jones at 24 right now, Joique Bell at 28. So Very, very close. Demaryius Thomas or Mike Evans in a PPR, then Eric Ebron or Martellus Bennett in a PPR. Boy, this one's tough, I guess, at least on the surface, but Mike Evans with Vincent Jackson back isn't going to see like 80% of the targets, but still he goes up against the Eagles. The Eagles secondary pretty weak. Again, can't really trust Brock Osweiler for me, Pat. I'm going Evans, and I'm going to go Marty B with Alshon Jeffrey looking unlikely here. I didn't get the inactives yet, but
yeah, he's out.
He is out. That's what I thought. So, yeah, Martellus Bennett for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I have Evans a pretty high, top 5 this week. I think Ebron's kind of more of a ceiling play, especially in that game. It's going to be a shootout. You'd imagine Detroit's going to be throwing the ball more than running it, and Oakland's had some struggles covering tight ends, as we know. But Bennett is the safer floor, especially in PPR. He's going to get plenty of volume.
All right, I got to throw my conspiracy theory out there. Okay, ready? The last 3 weeks, and the Raiders have given up a touchdown in every game this season except when they faced Peyton Manning and Owen Daniels. But the last 3 weeks, here's who scored touchdowns on them. Rhett Ellison, Jesse James, Helen Davis. Fire up Brandon Pettigrew today, baby. 3 touchdowns for Pettigrew. No. But I mean, hey, that's my conspiracy theory. They're going to let that touchdown up. And watch this actually happen. I'm not playing him, by the way, but watch it actually happen. Greg has another question about Vincent Jackson being active. Does that mean we fade Mike Evans? Well, I was already fading Mike Evans. I don't think that for cash game purposes he really offered the best profile that you want. But if you look at him in GPPs, Pat, I think he's still an intriguing play.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with Cash as well, just because there are better values at wide receiver this week. There are a number of values. But as far as, like you said, as far as GPPs, that game's got some sneaky shootout potential. Obviously, we know the Eagles play up in pace. Tampa has played up in pace over the last 3 weeks. So I think it can go back and forth. Both run defenses are stronger than the pass defenses. So I think it can go back and forth. And I do have Evans in several tournament lineups.
Yeah, and we look to Giles has a question. He said he asked on Twitter, but he has Alshon Jeffrey. Obviously, that's a problem. Has John Brown, can pick up Devontae Adams or Jordan Reed. I'm rolling with John Brown here. The Bengals defense banged up. No Adam Jones, potentially doubtful, so he's not going to play. Michael Johnson, doubtful. Doesn't look like he's going to play either. And also with Michael Floyd banged up, we could see some decent targets here for John Brown. Pat, any different thoughts?
No, I agree. You kind of got to hope that that Brown's got healthy over the bye, and it's tough because we've started him a few weeks ago when Bruce Arians said he was okay, and he didn't do anything. So you feel he's a little bit risky, but I mean, Devontae Adams had a ton of targets last week. He's not going to get that many targets this week. He didn't do very much with them last week, and Jordan Reed's in a tough matchup. So yeah, I agree. Brown be the way to go.
All right, so we have 2 running backs in a PPR and a healthy list of guys here. Jeremy Hill, Sean Drone, and that's it's not drawn, people. Drone, as in the things that fly up in the air. Sean Drone, Alfred Blue, and Joik Bell. Pat, what do you think here?
Ooh,
Me too.
I don't want Drone against Seattle in Seattle. And Blue, you're facing the Jets' run defense, so I'd X those guys out right away. Bell, we just discussed. You're kind of hoping for a short touchdown there. I think Jeremy Hill has the most upside in this matchup. I know that he's not playing nearly as much as we want him to, and Gio looks a little better in that offense. But I'm going with Hill here and kind of cross my fingers.
Yeah, and if you need to, I guess I'm going with Bell as the other guy. And you mentioned the matchup against the Jets. Keep in mind, Sheldon Richardson doesn't look like he's going to play in this one. So that at least helps a little bit. But then they have this guy named Leonard Williams who's going to be playing a little bit more, and he's kind of really good. So, yeah, I agree. Jeremy Hill is the best option of those, and then the remaining would be Joik Bell. All right, moving to Robert's question. He needs 2 running backs and a flex. He has Gurley and Gore, okay. Langford and Forsett. Well, obviously, I don't see why you would ever sit Gurley. from here it does get a little interesting. Frank Gore, he's basically what he's always been, is in that RB2 range. Maybe could lean a little bit more heavily on him this week to cover up some deficiencies. But this is a really interesting question, because here's how I have these guys ranked beyond Gurley. Langford 14, Gore 15, Forsett 16. So by my rankings, I'm going to sit Forsett. It is super close for me, Pat.
Yeah, I am pretty high on Gore this week. I do think they're going to lean on him. I think he's going to catch a few more passes than usual. And it's a tough call between Langford and Forsett, just especially because with Alshon out, you think Langford's workload is going to be high, and the Rams' defense is pretty beat up. I mean, Ogletree's gone, Quinn's not playing, so and obviously Long is out. So I think Forsett is going to get plenty of work. I think I don't have my rankings in front of me. I should probably pull them up, but I think I'm going to say sit Langford on this one.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's very close. Trey Mason inactive, by the way, so Todd Gurley. It's going to be, and they're going to need to, because Case Keenum is not particularly good. In 10 career starts, he has 8 interceptions and 7 fumbles. Okay, 10 career starts. He's averaging 1.5 turnovers per game. That is dreadful. And he's going to have, the first time that Elvis Dumerville puts him into the ground, he's in store for a long day here. IDP, we have a question about Tahir Whitehead. Of course I'd recommend a Temple Owl. Of course, come on, people. Yeah, Temple alum here, Temple alum there. Tahir Whitehead playing every down now. Don't start Josh Bynes. Don't start Stephen Tulloch. Tahir Whitehead would be the guy. Now, keep in mind, it isn't an ideal matchup, though. So that might be the one concern here. But still, if you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, that would be the guy to go with. Greg has a question about weather. I'm going to answer this one right away, Pat, and then I'll throw it to you. But I think of any factor in fantasy football that's the most overrated by people, it's weather. Okay, it's snowing. Should I avoid LaShawn McCoy against the Lions? How did that work out? It's one of those things. I mean, yeah, if it's a kicker and the weather is really bad, okay, maybe I fade that kicker. But for the most part, I'm going right after these guys. I remember years back, Tom Brady had one of his best games in a horrendous weather game. So for me, I don't use weather as a factor at all. I don't know if you think differently, Pat.
No, I mean, I think that game you're thinking of was a snowstorm against the Cardinals, and I think they put up like 50. It was fun to watch as a Patriots fan. But yeah, I mean, unless it's high wind, and we're talking like 30-mile-an-hour winds, 25 to 30-mile-an-hour winds, in which case you definitely want to avoid kickers, and passing games get downgraded. But I mean, a wet ball. These guys practice wet balls all the time. So I wouldn't put too much weight in it. I know people have got the Cowboys and Dolphins game on their mind. I wouldn't really push off of anybody that I was already on.
Yeah, it's not going to be a major factor at all. And remember, our buddies over at NFLweather.com do a great job, so you can check them out. A little plug for our friends there. But looking to the last question on the list here, so we haven't done any of our normal inactive actives, but that's great, guys. I love the questions. Keep them coming. Alex Smith or Mark Sanchez, and this isn't even me being an Eagle homer. By the way, one of my friends on Facebook posted, this is the 2-year anniversary of the butt fumble. So how awesome is that he's starting here? But I'm leaning Sanchez, and part of it is based on what Pat does. When he looks at pace, you look at pace for these guys. Obviously, pace is not something you're going to see too much out of the Chiefs. You will see it out of the Eagles. Sanchez can move that offense. I think he's a borderline, if not back-end quarterback one, and the ceiling is always really limited with Alex Smith. So for me, Sanchez, Pat.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Sanchez and Eagles quarterbacks in general is the way to play that passing offense, because they do spread it around so much. It's tough to pin down on a weekly basis who's going to benefit. So if you like the Eagles offense, and Tampa Bay's got a game run defense. So I do like DeMarco Murray on a workload standpoint, but on an efficiency standpoint, I think their Eagles passing offense is the way to go. And I like Sanchez as well. I definitely think he's a back end QB1.
Yeah. And should be fun to watch. He's auditioning for the starting job, allegedly, so more to hear on Sports Talk Radio. I can't even listen to Sports Talk Radio. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people complain about sports, because just enjoy it, folks. Even when it's bad, it's great, right? So I'll take it. And a long-suffering Eagles fan that I am. Number one GPP play. Well, that's a tricky question for us this week, Pat. GPP is really tricky. I'm gonna throw one out of left field. I'm gonna say Marvin Jones is my number one play. He gets Gerard Powers in this matchup, and that means Patrick Peterson, of course, is going to be on A.J. Green, and then Mohamed Sanu is actually going to see a lot of Tyrann Mathieu here. So where's the weak link? Powers, and you go after him. So I think he's one of the players who I've really locked into GPPs. Low ownership, a lot of people off of him, massive ceiling, and he's dirt cheap.
Yep. I'm going to go with Latavius Murray, and the thinking is this. I mean, everybody's expecting a full-on aerial shootout in this game, and people are going to be owning the guys, for that. So, it might not be the most likely thing, but the next most likely thing would be for the Raiders to score on the ground. Even if they get down to the red zone and Murray winds up punching two in, or if they get out to a lead and Murray winds up killing the clock, which is again not the most likely, but it's might be the next most likely. And so not many people are going to be on Murray. If you're playing any of the Raiders, you're probably playing Carr or Cooper or Crabtree, and the correlation doesn't really work with the running back. So I think if you're in a large field tournament, throw a dart in Murray's direction if you want to fade the Raiders passing game.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and I like that play because that's really the way that you have to think about these things when you're in GPPs. We know you can get away with some chalk, you can, because you want to keep pace, but you want those players who are going to differentiate yourselves. I'm pulling up the ownership percentage from Thursday contests, 7.5%. So that's reasonable. Here's another play too to consider: Jonathan Stewart. Yeah. Really under-owned, and this is a fantastic matchup. I expect them to lean pretty heavily on Stewart in that contest there. And so 6.5% for Jonathan Stewart. Jesse has a question. He says he streams DST. Good. I agree. I concur. Any good pickups for your playoffs? Well, let me preface this. And first, what I'm going to say is, don't own backup defenses. Okay, and I get so much flack for this, but here's the rationale. Defenses never, ever, ever get hurt. Okay, they never get hurt. Running backs get hurt all the time. So if I had my choice of a backup defense or Jay Ajayi or Buck Allen, I'm gonna stockpile those guys. Those are the guys that win you championships, not your defenses. So there's that. But I also understand this question could be asking because maybe your waivers close in playoffs, which is ridiculous, by the way, because as I said, players get hurt. But if that's the case, look to the matchups. You look to the matchups. Who are great matchups right now? Tennessee and Jacksonville. Now, Tennessee, you look to them, and they're facing the Jets and Patriots in weeks 14 and 15. Probably not going to get those teams. But you go to the Jaguars, they're facing the Colts and the Falcons. They're likely available. So, I might look to those teams there. However, I'm not carrying backup defenses, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, interesting enough, the Colts get Houston in Week 15. So, if Hoyer probably back by then, but that's not exactly an offense that you completely fear. Yeah, it's tough. I'm just looking quick over who has what at that stage of the game. St. Louis has Detroit and Tampa Bay. San Francisco has Cleveland and Cincinnati. And yeah, Tennessee, like you said, has got the Jets and New England. But yeah, I agree. It's kind of a waste of a roster spot unless, like you mentioned, your league type kind of forces you into that stance.
Yeah, it's rough, but I don't like carrying those backups. Remember, I do write a column for ESPN Insider on defenses every week that you can check out there. But let's just go. I'm going to go through some of these quickly here. And of course, guys, if you have any questions and yeah, Greg, go Bills. I think you and Pat might have a fun debate there. The Patriots fan that Pat is, but that's gonna be a fun game. I love those AFC East games. They're always so much fun to watch. But Leonard Hankerson active. People are not talking about how important he actually was. He wasn't that good, but he really opened up the offense. When Hankerson isn't in this offense, we know what the offense is. It's very two-dimensional. It's, you got the running back and you got the receiver, and which one are we going to throw to on this play, or, are we going to hand the ball off? So Hankerson opens some things up. That helps. Nevin Lawson, active. And people are like, who? Well, if you watched the Packers last week, you might have saw Nevin Lawson a lot because he saw 16 targets thrown into his coverage. He's covering Michael Crabtree today. So, Pat, I don't know about you, but I'm having a hard time finding a reason to not have Crabtree in cash game lineups.
Yeah, I know Crabtree is locked into both my FanDuel and DraftKings cash lineup. He's super tempting to play in GPPs. I mean, he makes a lot of things fit. He's still not overpriced. Like you mentioned, he's got a great matchup in the highest over-under game of the week. So if you have a couple other not off the wall, but lineup differentiating plays, you could probably sneak him in there because he's not that expensive, which is a good thing to go over. If you're playing a chalk play that's expensive, you really want to fade it in GPPs. But some of the more inexpensive chalk plays, you can fit them in there, and you still have enough cash to make your lineup different than most. So I'll have a little bit of exposure to him in GPPs and 100% exposure to him in cash.
Yeah, I think that's about where I'm at right now, and you love it. I mean, he's been playing really well. He's their deep target. And Carr really is taking a step forward. So the matchup is just beautiful here. Looking at a few others, obviously Ryan Matthews inactive, and Pat, I did want to pick your brain on this one just briefly here. With him inactive, obviously you would think there'd be an uptick, assuming rational coaching, that there would be an uptick for Darren Sproles. So what's your thoughts on Darren Sproles today?
He's interesting, especially as a correlation play with the Eagles defense, who I also like. Jameis is mistake prone. It kind of reared his head again last week after several turnover-free weeks. So I mean, if you play him with the D and he brings back a punt, then you got double points. So and the Philly D is more on the inexpensive side. So if he does get a few more targets, a handoff or two more, he can pay off his price, plus you get the chance of the double dip. So he's an interesting guy in tournaments as a correlation play with the defense.
Yeah, and I like him especially on DraftKings. I remember at least a few occasions, especially last season, where millionaire lineups had Darren Sproles in it. So obviously giving you that upside there. Another upside play on DraftKings too, Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry initially looked like a very tough matchup where he was going to see Byron Jones, but with Mo Claiborne banged up, he's got a nice matchup. So this one could be a good day to roll with Landry, especially in PPR formats. Brian Hall has a question: DeQuell Jackson or Bobby Wagner? I'm still going to lean Bobby Wagner. I know the matchup isn't necessarily ideal, but you lean towards the better player when they are close. And no offense to DeQuell Jackson, but Bobby Wagner is really good. Another question here from Jesse: has a tough matchup, and he's likely going to lose. Well, come on, let's be positive here for sure. You need a wide receiver with a high ceiling, I guess is what I'm taking here. And he said Kamar Aiken, Marvin Jones, or Leonard Hankerson. Well, I kind of tipped my hand already here, Pat. I'm going to go with Marvin Jones. I think the ceiling's massive and the matchup's ideal. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that he's looking for two. And I think Aiken would be my other choice in that trio. I mean, Hankerson. With him coming back, he's certainly. I also think one more thing with Hankerson is Tammy's been viable since he's been out, and with Hankerson back, I think you want to tick Tammy down a little bit. I don't think he's going to get quite the volume that we've seen over the last few weeks, but I still think Hankerson's ceiling is fairly low. Just because Vontae Davis is going to be on Julio doesn't mean they're going to avoid him. Vontae Davis has been beat this year, and I don't see Hankerson getting more than 7 to 8 targets that you're going to need to have a huge ceiling.
5. That's the number of touchdowns Vontae Davis has yielded in his coverage this season. 1 in each of the last 2 weeks. So he's not in that level. Patrick Peterson, Darrelle Revis, by the way, each of them have only yielded 1, and they came early in the season. So I'm not worried about Julio Jones whatsoever. I think this opens things up for him a little bit. And, they come out firing in this contest. So no worries there whatsoever. That is really going to wrap it up for us here. Lots of great questions today, guys. Thanks for participating. Thanks for checking us out. And all you subscribers, we really appreciate every single one of you. And, hey, if you're not a subscriber, it's not too late. You can check out the site right now. Also, you can head on over to DraftKings. There's still an hour left, and you can get into their $3 contest if you're a new user for free. Just use the promo code PFF. That's a $100,000 first prize, so you take a crack at that for free. Not too bad at all. That's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next week, Week 12. Crazy, crazy stuff, but good luck to everybody. Let's hope that we don't see another week like last week. So for Pro Football Focus, he's Pat, I'm Jeff, and that's a wrap.